we're going to start our tour with the jars. So up top here we have all of our Guppy birthing tanks. Just recently I swapped out these 2 tanks from jars to 2.5 gallon tanks. But the idea is that we take a pregnant female from the breeding colony. We seclude her into her own individual tank so that she can give birth, and then we pull them out. So you can see in here we have Fry. So the female gave birth in here, and we removed her and put her back in the colony. And in these tanks we just have our females ready to give birth. And on these tanks we've recently added in filters to all of them. So I can already tell that's made a big difference. Also in these tanks I'm utilizing our snails, because all of these tanks get pretty heavily fed. So when the ladies are in here, I feed them nice and heavy to get them nice and plump. And the snails are really in there to help clean up any extra food. And with the Fry, they have little tiny bellies, so anything that does not get eaten, the snails help clean it up and keep our water quality on point. All right, on each of these tanks, we have them all labeled so that we know what fry are in them, because when they're little bitty, you have no idea what they are. So this one here, you can see it's the F5 and the F6. These are our breed line. This is the line we're creating. And on these 2 new ones, these are our purple dragons. So each one gets labeled so they don't get confused with any other breed.
What are you doing? Moving down from our jars, we have our breeding line of polar parrots. These are our F2 into F3. And of course, when we are talking about F2s, I mean that when we are breeding fish, we have the originals, we have the F1s, and then now we of course have our F2s. So this is how far we've gotten in this breed line. So we are trying to breed these to get a fully black variation of the polar parrot. And as you can see, we've started with the black tail. The new fry seem to be coloring up, and you can start to see that the platinum fry are turning white. There's lots of algae on the tanks, so it's hard to clean when there's small fry. So we have 1 Pleco in there to help with the algae control. Moving on to our Panda cories, we originally started with 6 and initially lost 1. Then about 2 months later, we lost a second one, bringing us down to 4. And it took forever for these guys to start spawning. Panda cories like to lay eggs in a mop, which is the blue mop that we have in this video. And we typically like to pull the eggs and hatch them in a hatching cup. And then we wait till they are free swimming to add the fry to any system. And then we usually wait till they're of a certain size before we add them back to the main tank, because we want to make sure that they can survive. We do believe that we only have 1 breeding female, so we are waiting for our juveniles to grow out. There is a lot of algae that has grown to promote the comfort and hopefully promote more breedings. We do have some problems with small fish and snails eating some of the eggs in the mop if they're not pulled out at the right time. But we do hope that with frequent feedings, it'll fatten them up and hopefully we'll get more eggs per spawn. Oh, and if you are interested, we do feed our Panda cories live baby brine shrimp, aquarium co-op small fish feed, and frozen bloodworms. Next to our cories, we have our orange shrimp and super red Pleco growout tank. We put our orange shrimp in here as a holding tank as we set up a new tank upstairs. Unfortunately, when we set up that new tank, it actually took quite a while for it to become established, and in that we lost quite a few of our orange shrimp. Now today we do have some fry that are thriving in that tank, so that is a good sign that we might be able to add these shrimp in very soon. So as you can see in this tank, these shrimp have bred quite a lot, which is a great sign, and so we will have plenty to share into our other tank upstairs. As you can see, we also have some super reds in this tank. They had been struggling when they were being housed with our standard plecos, and so putting them in their own tank, it allows them to kind of recoup from any scavenging that they felt like they had to do. There's mulm at the bottom for the little shrimp and plecos to enjoy, so there's a lot more to go around in this tank for these super reds. Moving on to our breeding guppy line tank. This includes guppies. We have some shrimp that came on the moss that we put in the tank. We also have some albino bristlenose plecos. These guppies in this tank are our F5 to F6 guppies. The fry in this tank are actually looking to be coloring up to our desired pattern that we actually wanted, so that is very exciting. We have a sword plant in a pot in this tank. I actually really enjoy watching this tank. Guppies are one of those very active fish, but in this tank especially, there are quite a few of them that are very, very beautiful.
In this tank we have growing our pothos, and previously we had our electric blue acara in this tank, and it would never have any of these dangly roots. It was just the stem. So since we pulled them out, those roots have really grown and the plant is, growing much better. In the pot we have an Anubias. I think it's suffering from Anubias rot, so I don't think it's going to survive much longer.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, Anubias. But also in this tank we have put in some of the larger brown standard plecos to grow out and to start a new brown breeding colony. As you can see in the cave, we've got a big old male. He's taken up residence. So hopefully not too much longer we'll have some fry coming out of this tank as well. And this whole tank is just filtered off of one small sponge filter. I've been quite impressed by how much it cleans.
Yeah, especially given goldfish are known to be...
Yeah, they're pretty dirty.
Dirty.
Ooh, but the cool thing is I put all the duckweed from the other tanks into this one, and the goldfish
Eat it.
Oh, they eat it.
Look,
hard.
guys, there's like nothing.
No, and I'll put in a big fistful, and I have big hands, so it's a big fist, and it's gone within a day or two. Our two rescue goldfish. What'd you name them last?
Herman and Shelby.
Herman and Shelby.
They were formerly Jim and Bob.
So we got them donated to us from our neighbor. She won them at a fair, and them not being fish keepers, had them in a small little tank. And one day she was over here playing with the kids and saw the fish room, and she decided that she thought they'd have a better life here. So she brought them over, and they've been here ever since.
If you have made it this far in the video, make sure you like and subscribe.
In this tank, we have our colony of red tiger platies. These have been more trouble than I expected. I'm having a lot of trouble getting fry out of them. Whenever I seclude a female in one of our birthing jars, she either reabsorbs or she births too early. So I've decided to stop pulling them, and since I have noticed some fry in the tank. They like to hide in our moss root pile.
I don't know if I see any, but we can take a close-up shot and see.
Yeah, when I cleaned the tank yesterday, I saw about half a dozen.
Oh, good.
And just yesterday, when I was doing the water change, I pulled out all of the plecos I had in there, because this tank will be housing a new group of plecos that we should be getting next week. So hit subscribe and follow along to see what we get.
Ooh.
And in this tank we just have our monster Nubius. So I've super glued the pot that it came into this rock. Just kind of put it right in the middle. And that one seems to be growing really well.
Yeah, it looks great.
Alright, this tank here on the right is our standard brown Pleco grow out. And it also has some super red Plecos in there growing out.
Are there albinos, or is that just such a baby that you don't know the color?
It's a red, and I don't know why, but in this tank the super reds are really struggling. So I've stopped adding super red fry into this tank. We just have a potted Anubias.
Is that a filter inside a filter?
It's a double stacks filter.
We got that cake filter.
We've got this big piece of driftwood. As you can see, there's a bunch of Plecos on it at the moment. There they are. So you put the wood in there because they're constantly grazing on whatever they can find. So wood and botanicals are a great thing to add to your Pleco growouts so that they have a constant source of food. This is our jar of oak leaves. I'm going to go ahead and add a few in there. Just a little more grazing surface for those Plecos.
Because they've been sitting in there for a little bit, so they probably have a nice film on them, don't they?
That's right. Yeah, these are local. We just get these oak leaves out of our yard, and I soak them. And soaking them promotes a biofilm on them. And once they start breaking down, you get little microfauna and all sorts of stuff growing on it, which is a great grazing source for the Plecos as well as the wood. So if those super reds are getting kicked off the wood, put a little more area in there for them to graze on.
Yeah.
Hopefully that'll help them out.
I hope it does.
I don't know why they're not doing well.
Yeah, they look.
All the browns are fantastic.
Yeah, all the browns look amazing now. If that's a red, it just looks sad.
Yeah, they're all red. Oh, in the back, you can see I've added a couple guppies.
Yeah.
I've really started to spread some guppies around to different tanks so I can get more than one species going in each tank. So if those guppies drop their fry in here, the Plecos aren't going to predate on them. And so maybe that way, I picked out a couple different colors I like, and hopefully we get another little color variation going in this tank to add to our selection from other tanks.
Moving on down to the bottom rack, we have our mystery snail and quarantine tank. This tank has an under gravel filter in it, and it's had this filter in it for about a year. And we actually still really like this type of filter because it clears the water so quickly. The substrate in this tank is crusted coral to keep up the pH and the minerals for the snail's shells. And we recently sold about 50 of these snails, so that's why we're waiting for our populations to kind of grow once again. Next to our snails, we have our polar parrot grow out tank. As always, this tank is full of polar parrots. We've added a hang on back filter to help keep the water as clear as possible. They do like to nip at everything, so the minute anything gets into the water, they are tearing up everything and making quite a mess. So this is probably our longest running grow out or sales community that we've had as fish keepers. This last tank on our rack is another really good guppy tank. This has our white guppies and our snakeskin guppies that we had back in the summer when we made a couple of outdoor tub ponds. And if you would like to see those videos, make sure you check them out in the description below. In this tank, you can see there are a lot of really amazing colors that and patterns that have developed in this tank. This used to be a really amazingly scaped tank, but as you can see, it is worse for the wear and is in need of a revamp of aquascaping in this tank. So if you'd like to see that, make sure you subscribe so you can follow along and maybe you'll see it for yourself.
So this is our 20-gallon long fry tray tank.
Okay.
Right? So I've got 4 trays that I put freshly hatched. Well, at the moment it's mainly just plecos. So these 3 are plecos, and this one I'm growing out some Panda cories in until they're big enough to go into the main tank. So in this one, I've got a clutch of super red plecos. So I've put in some of the oak leaves. So I've actually got oak leaves in all of these. I've really seen a benefit into adding the leaves. There's a lot higher survival rate adding in the botanicals into the fry trays. So each of these has a sponge filter. You can see the filters on the bottom. So the air gets pumped through the filter and it brings in air and water into each of the trays. Now each of the trays get fed really heavily because each tray has a clutch of fry. So there's a lot of fish in this tank, and this tank probably gets the most water changes out of everything just because there's such a high volume of fish in it. And this one, you can see that's a regular standard Pleco, but this is our group of standard and lemon.
Oh, wow.
That's a little guy. Little guy. So you got our lemons there, standards here. These actually come from our group, our breeding group. It's a lemon male and a standard female. And so this is what we get out of that group. It's about a half and half mix of lemon and standard colors. And in this one is just all of our albinos. You can see that leaf, they've chewed it up pretty good. About time for a new leaf.
Wow, look at them all.
Yeah, they're the most prolific. So that's all albinos. They've got their wood and their leaves. This one is our Panda cories. I don't know if we're going to be able to find it in the corner. There he is. Can you see him there?
There he goes, yeah.
He's right by the rock. So I haven't seen them in a few days. They're getting decently soon. There's another one.
I see
Yeah, so they all get fed multiple times a day. Right now I'm giving them a lot of the Aquarium Co-op small fish feed. I just dump it in there and it spreads all over that tray so they can graze on it for a while. And then, like I said, they get fed 2 or 3 times a day, sometimes 3 or 4 if I'm maybe on the weekends when I'm home. Alright, over here we've got a catch cup. Right now there's just a little guppy in it, but usually when I pull the eggs for the Panda cories, I put them in here until they hatch and then give them a day or 2, and then they go into the tray. This tank, it has a heater, and all the tanks in here, there's only 2 heaters in the whole fish room. I like to keep this tank around 82 to 83. And it has an extra filter on it. So with all the bio load and all the feeding that goes into it, I want to make sure that this one is filtered quite heavily. Alright, in the bottom of the tank here, since we were having trouble with the super reds growing out with the standards, I decided to dump the last clutch of super reds into this tank. And as you can tell, they are quite sassy and colorful.
Over to the second rack that you can't see at all.
Hey guys. Okay, second rack of tanks. We're going to start at the top. And on top here we have more jars.
Whoop, whoop.
So this one is actually a cheese ball tub.
Yeah.
It's like 2 gallons. So we've got females in these 4. And these last 2 have fry growing out in them. So on this rack, I wanted to keep mainly the purple dragon mosaic guppies. So all of these are the purple dragons. And as you can tell, they're super pregnant. I'm just waiting on them to pop.
Let's go, ladies. Push them out.
So in this jar, as you can see, the fry and lots of snails. They're in there eating all the extra food. So up top, we've got our duckweed. I like to keep a little bit of plants in the tank to help keep up with the water parameters. And this one is actually a mutt clutch of guppies. So I guess this isn't a purple dragon, but it's got plenty of snails in there too. You see all of them?
Yeah.
I don't like that.
I don't like it either. We can deal with it though.
Yeah.
Moving down from the jars on the second rack, we have our long fin green dragon bristlenose plecos. That is such a mouthful. I guess we could shorten it and call them LFGDBNP, but I don't know if that's even any easier. Anyway, we originally started about 7 to 8 months ago with 6 of these plecos. We lost one 3 months ago, and then we had one recently jump out. So now we definitely use a lid on top. Currently, as you can see, we have 2 males that are in caves that have a female that is getting really wide, which tells us that there are eggs that she needs to lay. So we're hoping that very, very soon there will be some breeding. We actually recently added a potted plant so that it promotes some comfort and hopefully will induce that spawning. Moving next door is our alternate albino bristlenose pleco growout tank. Our original tank was getting way too overpopulated and there was just too much competition for food. So we decided to put just one clutch of the albinos in this tank. And as you can see, there are so many of them. We also have a larger group of purple dragons growing out in this tank that are ready for the shops, or just keep breeding in this tank if they want to. We recently added a floating rotala and a spawning mop to help the survival rate of the guppy fry. We've also added a larger piece of driftwood for the plecos to graze on in between the frequent feedings that we do give them. In this tank, we have both some more guppies that are growing out, as well as our lemon blue eye bristlenose plecos. This is where we grow out all of these plecos, and actually we sold about 50 of these plecos and still have quite a big group in this tank, which shows that they are breeding quite well, and that is a good sign as a fish keeper.
We have a weird man-made sculpture. What the fuck? We don't know. It's the only thing that we've ever bought, really.
No, that one came with.
Oh, that came with something, so we didn't even buy it.
No, we got it free.
As you can see in this tank, we have another breeding tank for our plecos, but this has one lemon blue eye male and 2 standard females. And when you get those together, not to get too into genetics, it gives us about a 50% chance of standard and lemon. We also have a group of guppies in this tank. And of course, as all guppies do, hopefully we'll have some more breeding going on and we'll have another pregnant female that will be ready for the jars.
All right, in this tank, we just have a community of guppies. This is where our mutts go after we breed them out and hatch them in our jars. They go in here to finish their grow outs. It's a little sparse at the moment. We've been distributing those out to some shops and individuals around. And we actually just pulled out all of the bristlenose that were in that tank. Pulled out the albinos and the standards. So that tank's a little sparse, but it'll get filled back up in no time. In the middle, we have our albino bristlenose pleco grow out tank. See that guy right there chilling. So this one I've added the oak leaves and we got the driftwood in there, so they've got plenty of stuff to graze on all day. And that plant in the pot is actually a sword plant. You hear a lot of talk about bristlenose eating sword plant. And in our tank upstairs that actually happened, but I don't know why they're not picking at that one because that plant is gorgeous. And like I said earlier, I've been spreading some guppies around to all the tanks, and in this one I've picked out a few different colors and some patterns I like and threw them in there. So hopefully they can populate and we can pull some guppies out of there eventually as well. In this last tank we currently just have a group of long fin albino bristlenose plecos growing out. Just trying to get those to grow up to maturity so that we can start spawning them in this tank. And up until yesterday, this was our last remaining tank of angelfish. And one of our shops we supply to went ahead and took the rest of them. So that'll be the first time we've ever sold out of a fish, which is a good feeling.
Yeah, that's a really good feeling.
Let's see, in the pots, we've got a dwarf aquarium lily. I've trimmed all of the pads off of it so it can focus on growing its leaves, which it looks great.
Yeah, it looks really good.
And then there's some Sagittaria in that other pot.
What's happening?
Our albino bristlenose Pleco has apparently kicked all the eggs out.
Oh, no!
Yeah.
So what are you going to do?
I'm going to get those scooped up. I'm
Okay.
going to get that guppy out of the catch cup here.
Yeah.
Get some fresh water in there with the air line.
Okay.
And we'll get the eggs in there, and hopefully in a few days they'll hatch and not fungus. I'll add a little bit of methylene blue. Just a little bit. Methylene blue. Rescue mission.
Good job.
No guppies allowed. Block.
And finally, at the end of the Fishroom rainbow, we have the 55-gallon electric blue acara growout tank. This 4-foot tank is a really good space, and it's a better growout for these acaras. We actually sold 50 to 75 recently. This is the second tank in the whole fish room that has a heater. It's on the bottom shelf and it's next to an exterior wall, so it kind of needed that extra heat to keep it up to temp. We've also added some albino bristlenose plecos to grow out in this tank and help keep the glass and the decor clean. Now, this is the only other tank that we have fake decor in, and we did that for the sake of the acaras. They were really shy and did not want to swim around until we put these fake plants in there. And then they felt more comfortable and decided to start schooling, which is really cool to see. As always, thank you so much for joining us, and make sure you subscribe and turn on the notifications so you get notified every time we have an awesome fish video, like maybe another tour of all our aquascaped tanks. So make sure you follow along for that coming soon. I'll see you next time. Bye!
It's that sponge cake, bro.
That's such a long breathing tube. He's almost there. Take a breath, buddy.
Our original albino?
I mean, keep your crunching to yourself.
Sorry, guys. This was supposed to be a dubbed video.
This is dubbed. So dubbed. Look, there's a blue shrimp back there.
There's a bunch of them.
Look at all the things in this tank. Oop, they are very chunky.
Yeah, they're chunky.
What is to come?